Are skyrocketing prices in your dream location making property investing feel out of reach? Don't let high costs stop you from building a property portfolio. In today's episode, we're uncovering smart strategies and untapped opportunities to help you get into the market without breaking the bank. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, we've got the tips to help you navigate high demand areas and still come out on top. Let's dive into it. Welcome everyone to the Smash Property Podcast. I'm Nick V and this is Akira, and we have just come back from Thailand.
And Hong Kong. A double one.
How did you like that little trip?
It was beautiful. I think we really needed some time to recalibrate, set ourselves up for the next couple of months.
Definitely.
Working holiday, of course. But
it's one of those things, yeah.
You know what? I was thinking it's actually awesome to be able to have like those island vacations where you do have something to put your thoughts towards. Otherwise, my mind goes crazy. I get a bit itchy if you're just sitting there.
Yeah, we do need that downtime. Had a great time in both Hong Kong, Thailand, and I'm not gonna lie, we've already started looking at our next little trip.
Yeah.
Somewhere. I'm not saying we don't like home, but
life as a BA.
It's like everyone, you come back from a trip and then you're like, oh, when's the next trip?
Yeah.
So we've got a few things in the works that
in the pipeline.
We'll try and make it towards. But otherwise, how's life? What's happening?
It's good. Right back into everything. Lots of conversations.
We kind of never really stopped, really. It was work the whole time, to be honest.
I think it's one of those things, though, just being out of your bubble is really incredible to give you a bit of perspective on, where you're at, where you're going, what you've been doing. So the amount of, conversations I've had this week since coming back has been really interesting, especially with some of the new investors that we have on board.
Yeah.
But yeah, can't complain. Just been getting the body clock going again and getting into the rhythm of, the routine. Yourself?
I felt like a little bit slow at the blocks the last couple of days after we got back from Thailand. But I feel like I'm getting there. There was some late nights when we came back and some early starts. So I'm,
getting that routine going.
Getting the routine going. My brain's like, nah.
It's super cool. We've got this vlog going as well where we're kind of sharing a lot of content with, the day in the life of, because I feel like
a lot of the behind the scenes stuff and like a lot of candid stuff that people wouldn't normally see of the two of us or just a BA in general. Kind of how the business works behind the scenes and a bit of our lifestyle as well, which has been...
It's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun. Like, as much as this podcast was cool, and it is cool.
I love doing the podcast.
The podcast is cool. The vlog, I think, is just that, like, the more chill, like, the more real side of the two of us.
Yeah,
like,
candid, I think.
More candid. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Less polished, more candid.
So don't forget to check that out on YouTube. Every Sunday, 7 p.m, our behind-the-scenes vlog comes out. Road to Buyer's Agent of the Year. That's what the vlog is.
I like it. The concept.
The title and the concept of the vlog. And it'll kind of document like what we're doing
along the way
to get there, which is super
cool.
Come
on our
journey. So we're a couple episodes in on that, which is pretty awesome. So it's all happening.
Yeah.
A lot is going on. But all right, so let's get into today's topic: affordability hacks for property investors. Now, this was a really cool topic, especially we've recently onboarded a lot of new young investors that before we had spoke to them didn't really know that there were markets outside of Sydney or outside of Melbourne where they could really get, or even Adelaide. We've got a guy down there to really get into. So I think we'll take it from the top in the sense of you mentioned earlier off camera, we're talking about the mindset and sort of the stuff that we're kind of told through the media and stuff like that. So just talk to us about that before we get going.
Yeah, not just being the media, even when you jump onto realestate.com. I mean, if you live in Sydney and you're thinking you want to purchase a property or your first investment in Sydney, it's going to be almost upwards of $1 million. If you're
talking about a house, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think with that, considering that deposit that you would need to save to, you basically think, saving for that 20% or 10% deposit, that would, for most people at least, would take years.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think, understanding not just what's in your backyard, but this country is huge.
Yeah.
There's so many different markets and opportunities that you can get yourself in. And what the main thing is understanding that, you know, your deposit is of course important and plays an important role. But if you're going for the higher price bracket, that's going to take you more time.
Definitely.
So it's super interesting when you have younger clients on board. You know, I've had someone specifically say to me, I've only got 50,000 of savings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
That's huge.
That's
like to get to 50K, like especially
and she
with
was,
everything.
I think she's 22. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
What
oh,
a
yeah,
G, honestly.
She watches this podcast every now and
she
then.
does?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. I think I know
Well,
the person you're talking about.
I'm talking to you if you know who you are. But
Yeah.
I was so proud of her because
Yeah.
it's one of those things when you're at that age and you can save to that amount, there are properties available to you.
Yeah.
Might
Yeah.
not be in your backyard, in your city, but they are properties outside of
100%.
that area, interstate, that you could look into where you can get your foot in the door
Yeah.
early,
Yeah.
as opposed to wait till, you know, a few years down the track. So leveraging that opportunity and just recalibrating your brain and staying away from some of the news stories talking
Yeah.
about inflation, everyone's priced out of the market, those
Yeah.
super negative
Yeah.
kind of connotations towards property. Just stay away from it, because if you have a goal to get into the market, if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, 100%. So I think you kind of, I just want to expand on a point there where you talked about, like, you know, let's use, you know, you live in Sydney, for example, you're
Yeah.
looking around for a house, everything's north of $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Which is, you know, if you were going to save a deposit to go and buy one of these properties and you're saving a cash deposit without any help from, you know, mum and dad, or you don't have any other properties, that's going to take a while, regardless of how much money you're earning. To save that cash deposit is going to take ages, right? So what you and I are really talking about is other markets outside of the major capital cities like a Sydney or a Melbourne. Brisbane's kind of close there at the moment, but there's other regional markets that perform amazingly
Exceptionally well.
There are other capital city markets, as you know, as you probably know, that have performed very, very well. They're also starting to get a little bit in the expensive category. But rather than saving, you know, a couple of $100,000 to go and buy $1 million property, you could save $50,000, which is still a huge amount of money, but you're able to get into the market now, today.
That's right.
You're able to start earning growth on your money today, so that then you can start growing your portfolio, you know, in a much quicker and shorter time span.
It's all about getting your foot in the door as
That's
quickly as possible.
As quickly as possible. And that was the one thing, like, if I could go back in time and tell my, you know, 18-year-old self, it would be like, yeah, like, not that I wasn't hustling at the time, but it'd be like, buy a house, buy a property, like, as soon as you can. Like, that's my, if there's,
right.
I don't live with a lot of regrets, but that's probably the one regret.
Oh, you and me both, because once you do it, you understand the value of equity there after purchasing that first one.
Yeah.
Especially if it is the right one and you have guidance with, you know, looking at the growth, the data behind that property. The equity is the next thing that you leverage from purchasing correctly.
Yeah.
And then that's where, you know, you can create opportunities down the line. So I think maybe just rounding that out in terms of mindset, it doesn't have to be something that is, you know, inaccessible, especially when you're younger. I think what I want for not just for us, you know, is growing a mindset with our listeners and our followers to understand that if, you know, you want something more for yourself or something better, there are opportunities out there.
Tons
you
of
just
them.
have to have like access to it. So
Access
between
to
your
it.
broker, you know,
Yeah.
your team around you, that's part of it.
Yeah, 100% having that team. And, you know, we were talking earlier, like, it's really just about time. You know, there's this quote that it gets thrown around
Say
every investor, right? But it's not about timing the market, it's time in the market.
That's it.
And that's what I was saying before. If I could go back to my
think-
18-year-old self and really just say, hey, man, like, get into the market now, because by the time you're 35, you're going to have, you know, so much equity, so much growth that you can have all of these choices to do what you want to do.
That's exactly it.
Not that I'm, you know, I'm in an awesome position now, and I'm grateful for it. But if there's one thing, I just go back in time and tell myself that.
I think maybe just to tag off this, and this is probably something more candid that I've just thought of that I'd like to share. I think mindset wise, when you're younger, at least for me, when I was younger, I had a lot of fuel and fire. That like it doesn't last throughout your whole career and throughout your whole life. So when you're younger and you have that energy, that hustle is so important to use and leverage off, because once you have that deposit and that money, you know, the equity starts building. The equity starts to build up, and then you can essentially, you know, be a little bit more passive and less aggressive if you so wanted to set yourself up. Does that make sense?
No, it does, and I'll talk through that equity component and go through a bit more detail towards the end. But no, it's so true, right? Because I remember, like, not that we're not hungry now, but you just have, it's just a different energy when you're sort of, you know, in your late teens and early 20s. Like you got a lot of fire. And
so all the young people, get in it.
Like, just there's nothing like, there's nothing sort of there's no reason to not do it. Like, because we've said in another podcast, like, there's so many reasons, so many things that can go wrong, but what if it goes right?
I think that's the biggest thing, especially with media. Lastly, on mindset is things can be very negative, and it's important to be very particular about what you're consuming and listening to. I was just sort of thinking then a second as well, like, you know, we're saying to people, hey, like, if you live in Sydney, go and buy another property in another state. Like, that's scary. It is very scary, and I think there's obviously resources out there to allow you to be able to do that, whether you want to do it yourself, to put in the research, put in the work, go to those locations and buy property. That's definitely doable. That's a route that you can take. There's obviously, you know, buyers agents like ourselves, which take all of that hassle and hardship out of it, especially when you're working because we're doing it every day, right? Like, we're buying in these markets, you know, literally every week. So there's kind of like two options. You can DIY, which, you know, is totally doable. Obviously a bit more time consuming. It just takes time and energy if you do it yourself. That's the only thing. And that in itself is time out of the market, especially if you want the confidence behind it. Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to let people know there's, you know, probably two ways you can go about doing it. But we might be sort of going, people might be listening to this going, yeah, well, look, if I've got 50 grand and like, you know, if I go and buy a property in, I don't know, whatever other capital city, a Perth or an Adelaide or wherever, like, where am I going to live? Like, what am I going to do? And I think you from your own experience, you've done what's, you know, termed rent vesting. So just tell us a little bit about rent vesting and how, you know, your circumstance played out. So look, from my experience, I'll just explain what rent vesting is. Rent vesting, very simply, as I'm sure a lot of people know, is renting where you want to live in terms of lifestyle and location, and purchasing property to invest out on the side. So what that does, it gives you the capacity to grow equity and a portfolio in the background whilst, you know, in your early years, being able to still live the life that you want, very simply. So my experience with that, it allowed me to, you know, with the banks, borrow as much money as possible to continue to purchase property. As I held on to each property as I purchased them, they grew in equity, and then they essentially made babies. So you pull out equity of each property and then go again. So I maxed out on that, and I continued to increase my income to you know, make sure that I could purchase more and grow the portfolio. But that's just very simply what it is, and how I utilize that strategy for my own circumstance. I think you did it the smart way. I was the idiot who went and bought, you know, PPLR and, and I did it the hard way. But like, no, I think the smart thing, like if you're, again, you know, your late teens, early 20s, like if you're planning out your long-term life strategy and property investing is a part of that, you know, it's rent in, you know, the location where your lifestyle's at, your mates are, and you want to go out and all that sort of stuff, you know, buy properties in, you know, locations that you can afford, whether that's in Sydney or, you know, if not, it's in other locations, and do that. And just keep, like you said, just when you've got equity, go to your broker, pull out the equity as soon as you can, and just park that equity in an offset account. You don't have to touch it. You don't have to use it, but you've got the equity there. So when opportunities come up, bang, you can just go straight away. And I think maybe just to extend on that, maybe to share my circumstance, I lived in like apartments in Pymble, like really beautiful apartments, Pymble, Wentworth Point, like those apartments were upwards of, I'd say at the time when I was living there, maybe 4 years ago now, they were upwards of 800K.
Yeah.
You know, the expenses of owning that type of property along with strata, it just didn't make economical or financial sense for me.
It would have been a financial dead end. Like if you had bought those properties that you rented, like
especially those rates were quite low at that time too.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you had have bought those types of properties and rented them out, like the rent was nowhere near covering all of the expenses of the property, let alone the mortgage.
I'm pretty cheeky. I go and look at what they're worth still, just because I'm curious. The growth there does not even come close to a house that I've bought interstate.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Just in a nutshell, it's important to, you know, leverage, you know, if you want to live in a certain area, using your money to work for you as opposed to you working for money.
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, we've mentioned a lot about equity and using the equity, you know, to buy more properties with, or to maybe even buy your own principal place of residence to live in. But I feel it's probably important because, like, when I was in my early like stages of understanding property investing and how it all worked and all that sort of thing, like I knew what equity is, but I'm like, how does it in practical, the real world, how does it work?
Yeah, and I think it would be quite interesting for you to share this again, because you really break it down very simply, and it's easy to comprehend when you explain it. You did it really well for me when I first started my journey, in the sense of explaining how equity can be leveraged through your portfolio.
So look, equity is obviously the growth in your property. So basically you've got the property value, let's call it $500,000.
Yes.
You've gone and lent $400,000 from the bank. You put in 100,000 of your own, just as a very high level generic, you know, example. So there's $100,000 of equity sitting in that property from day one, right? Because that's our deposit. We hold that property for a year.
Yes.
Okay. Let's say the property, we bought it for 500. Let's say it's now worth 600,000.
Yep.
Okay. So that initial 100,000 is now 200,000. So we've got $200,000 of equity in there. Now, I'm not a broker and this is not financial advice, but the bank is generally going to lend you up to 80% of the value of that property, right? So we can use 80% of that equity amount. So what we can then do is we can go to our bank and we can say, hey, I've now got, you know, property's grown in value by 100 grand. It's now worth 600,000. How much equity can I get out? Obviously, depending on your serviceability. Let's say you can service without a problem. The bank is going to give you 80% of that $600,000 value, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What will happen then is your loan amount will then increase to that 80% lend that you've now taken out.
Yes.
And you will then have that cash amount sitting in your account.
There we go. Okay.
Now, you need to be, you know, financially responsible because you've now increased your debt position.
You don't
now
have an asset.
You now have access to that cash, which is now sitting in your account, which should be in an offset. Well, not should be. I'm not telling people how to run their thing. But, you know, what I've done is always I put it in an offset, interest only. So, you know, until I touch it, I'm not paying anything down. All right. So that's I guess the concept of using the equity, or how it can work from your portfolio. Now, the next step would be using that equity, which is now sitting in your account, as a cash amount.
Yeah.
You then use that as a deposit to go and buy another property with it.
Yeah,
right.
So you can leverage that for getting another loan, basically.
So this is when we talk about using equity to buy another property, there are other ways you can kind of do it, but generally that's how I've done it over the years, right?
Yeah, likewise.
So you go to another bank or even the same bank, whichever, use a broker, and then you go, hey, here's my deposit. What can I go and borrow now? And you go through the same process again. You rinse and repeat that.
I think the important part of that as well is when you are growing and starting off with a portfolio, what you now have that you didn't have, as opposed to buying your principal place, is an asset that generates income through rent.
Correct.
Which is super important.
Yeah. But I think what I, you know, the one of the major points that I want to bring home here is that's just with one property.
Yeah.
Right. When we start to have multiple properties in our portfolio, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that equity amount compounds beyond belief. And do you know what I mean? And you might, some people might be watching this going, oh, there's no way I can get to 2, 3 or 4, 5 properties.
I felt like that when I started.
100%, everybody does. But the reality is you get one, you might have to increase your income a little bit to increase serviceability so you can get number 2. But it's all doable and it's all possible, right? We've seen so many people get multiple properties in super quick fashion.
I mean, we spoke to someone today.
Literally today.
Within
6 properties in 12 months through
Legend.
super. Like absolute banging. So, and then like say you're sitting on 10 of those bad boys, they're all increasing in value.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So the equity in most circumstances is going to far outpace your ability to go and earn money. So your properties are going to be making more money than you.
That's what I found so like
it's uncomprehendable. Like
it's a bit funny because I felt like an idiot for not doing it sooner.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
so
I can't even save this amount of money in my day-to-day job.
I'm like, I really started investing, I think my mid to late 20s. I'm like, man, if I did this like in my late teens, like 18 when you can buy a property, god damn, it'd be in such a differ't position now.
It's not taught to you at school.
But I think one of the things,
nobody knows.
Again, this is not financial advice, we're not accountants, mortgage brokers or anything like that. But one of the things that people can use equity for is not just to go and buy more properties with. Like, let's say you get to 10 properties, right? You've got choices to then continue growing your portfolio. In fact, you get to 1 or 2 properties. You've got choices to continue growing your portfolio. You can rinse and repeat that strategy I just spoke about. You've got choices to maybe cash out and go and buy your principal place of residence to live in, right? You've got choices to maybe cash out and go and start the business you've always wanted to start. Maybe buy the cars you've always wanted to buy. Yeah. That sort of thing. Now, that's obviously, you need to be a lot more financially savvy because, again, you take out equity, you're increasing your debt position.
That's right.
So you don't just want to go out and get the equity and, hey, I got heaps of cash and go and blow it. Like, don't do that. Make calculated decisions. Like, what can this money, how can I invest this money to get me more money back? Yeah. But I know a lot of people that have used their portfolio to go and, start their own business, something that I've done. I know a lot of other people that have done the same thing. It just gives you more choices and more options that your 9 to 5 doesn't give you. So look, we've spoken about the why, the mindset. You don't need to, just because you live in a certain capital city, a Sydney, Melbourne, wherever, it doesn't mean you've got to buy in those markets, right? There are lots of other markets in the country that we buy in every single day of the week that are performing very, very well. So you don't need to, buy where you live. If you're a young investor or any investor and you've been thinking and sitting on, hey, I want to get into the market, but there's just not the right time and interest rates and yada, yada, yada. Put all that aside, park the noise. It is about getting into the market and having time in the market, because time in the market sees your equity position increase. That's where the wealth is really built. Because if you're waiting on the fence, you're missing out on what's going to happen in the property market. If you're sort of sitting there thinking, hey, yeah, I'm ready to go, but I'm just nervous if I buy in another city, another state, where am I going to live? What am I going to do?
That's it.
Like you just said, the example there, you can go and rent vest, which means you rent where you want to live and you invest elsewhere where it's more affordable. You might have to do that for a number of years to sort of build the wealth. So you can go and buy the dream home in Sydney, wherever that might be. Lots and lots of investors do that. I was the idiot that didn't. I did it. I did it the hard way.
You had reason.
And then the equity at the end of it, like that's the power behind building wealth. That's the reason why you want to invest in property, is to get that equity position increased. You want your
wealth
properties
creation.
growing in value, the wealth creation. That's what gives you the financial freedom, right? We've said it in other podcasts. It's not the $100 positive cash flow property, that in your portfolio is not going to do that. 100%.
So of course that's important, but just know where you're at and the journey. Property is not like an overnight thing. It takes time. Like you said, it's time in the market.
Time in the market.
So the sooner you do it, I think the better.
The sooner you do it, the better. And I wanted to talk a little bit about our we've got our vlog that's going out there. A lot of people that might watch this may not know that we've also got Instagram content. So really short, sharp educational videos that go out on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, There's even YouTube shorts that go out. So don't forget to check that out and follow us on Smash Property Investing on all of those socials. We are on all of them.
We are.
We are, right?
I think
LinkedIn too. We've got LinkedIn. I've
do
got
we have
LinkedIn.
Twitter? I don't have Twitter.
We don't have. I don't think it's called Twitter anymore.
Oh,
I think we've just.
It's called X.
It's called
Sorry,
X.
I'm old.
Come on, man. We got to get with that. It's called X. No, we don't have that.
No.
I don't know. I've read it. There's no. I don't. TikTok's hard enough for me.
Honestly, it's a lot of juggle. But I think the main reason, I always ask myself, why am I doing this? Why are we even bothering with this? But I think, it comes down to why, just like property. And it's about creating a mindset between people who are interested in the fundamentals of creating a better future for themselves. So
100%.
I think anyone who's interested in that and have friends around them who are also interested in it, it's important. Like I said just previously, consume the right stuff.
Yeah.
If you have a goal, consume stuff that's going to bring you closer to that, not further away. So
100%.
That's what I think I'm hoping to do, at least from the intent of why we
that.
do this.
And like, I'm super keen. Like, I'm big about like connecting like-minded people together, whether it be creating a little community of investors that, might want the same things as you. Like, that's because it's not every day that you meet people that are on that same wavelength where it's hey, I want to buy, like, I want to better my position. I want to, in 5-10 years, I want to be here. Yeah. Like, it's not, that's not so common. So I think through the business that we have, we speak to a lot of people that kind of sometimes feel isolated. Like, they might have bought the wrong properties, or they might want to get into the market and they feel alone. Whereas through the community that we can create.
Yeah. I mean, specifically me, I felt super alone when I first started. I was living up in Newcastle. I mean, everybody was going, I was 22, saving for my deposit. Everybody's going out every night in my friend group, buying the nice clothes, getting makeup, whatever it might have been. And I was like, wow, this is like, I feel like the black sheep in this situation. Yeah. So I think if I would have had like-mindedness, I feel like I would have been further along right now. Yeah,
no, that is the way, and that's Smash Property Investing that will get you there.
Yeah, hopefully.
Not a shameless plug, but no, I think there was tons of gold packed into that episode.
I think the equity download was amazing.
Yeah,
that's something I never knew when I started that.
And honestly, if people are out there and you're like, I don't know what to do, give us a call. Chat to one of us. We'll happily sort of point you in the right direction, whether you do business with us or not. I think it's always about
just having
connecting.
A chat.
It's about connecting. It's about chatting. But I think that's all for today's podcast. So thanks so much for joining once again.
Thank you for having me.
And so every Wednesday, 7 p.m, the Smash Property podcast comes out. Every Sunday, 7 p.m, the Smash Property vlog comes out. And that will do it for today. So thanks so much again. And thanks everyone for joining us once again on the Smash Property podcast. I'm Nick V, and this is Akira, and we will see you next week, 7 p.m. Thanks so much.